Well, hello, this is Vincent Green, and we're going to continue our study of New Testament Greek. And this is lesson 13 in our Machen textbook. And this lesson is entitled Future, Active, and Middle Indicative. Future, Active, and Middle Indicative. So we have vocabulary, and I will come back to that. But let me begin by telling you what has changed. So we're now going to learn a new tense. Um, and if you take a look at this page here that I have, this is our Greek verb system that you're familiar with if you've been watching the previous videos. And we've looked at present, active, middle, passive, indicative. We've also looked at imperfect, active, middle, passive, indicative. But now we're going to be beginning to look at other tenses. And the one you need to be aware of is that at this point, we're going to be looking at the active and middle of the future. Not yet the passive, but the active and middle of the future. That's why this is titled, this lesson is titled the way it is. So there's a future active indicative, there's a future middle indicative, there's a future passive indicative. Okay? So remember, there's only three voices, but there's different tenses and there's different moods. And so we're staying with the indicative mood, but we're branching out and beginning to look at the future tense. Now, I've explained to you what the present tense means and how it is formed. I've also explained to you how the imperfect tense, what it means, and how it is formed. But this is the change that I'm referring to. The stem of the word, remember it was always stem plus ending. For the imperfect, you still had a stem and an ending, but you add this augment, but we always had the stem. And the stem was always the same. This is our base word for luo, for present active indicative, first person singular. This is imperfect active indicative, first person singular, eluon. And again, the stem never changed. It always had the same letters in it, no matter if you went from present to imperfect. However, when you go to the future, the stem changes. So what I've done is I've changed this up here to say first stem. Present is built off of first stem. Imperfect is built off of first stem. But the future is built off of the second stem. And you say, what is the second stem? Why do you give it that kind of terminology? Well, that's what I'm going to explain to you. When you look at the future tense, the stem is different because it actually adds a sigma to it, which I will explain. But let me take you back to the lesson and let me just kind of walk you through this. The present and imperfect tenses in all three voices are formed on the present stem. So he calls it the present stem. I call it the first stem. Okay, so first stem equals present stem in terms of Machen language. So if we want to put this here, let me do this. I'm going to move all of this over, give myself some more space. And so I call it the first stem. Machen calls it the present stem. Okay. The reason I like to change the name of it is because it can be confusing when you think about present active indicative. So it's confusing terminology, but I'll at least make reference to it here. This is what he's talking about. So instead of saying present stem, let's just say first stem, to which the personal endings being joined to the stem by the variable vowel. So it created the present and the imperfect, all of those possible combinations. But when you begin to look at the future active and the future middle, they're formed on the future stem. So I call this first stem, I call this second stem. Okay? And I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a minute. But this is the second stem. So that's why I don't really adopt that language of Machen, but I will put it in here just so you see the connections. So when I say first stem, you know what I'm talking about. Second stem. And so second stem is different than first stem. It's still the same base word, luo, or the idea of loosing, but the stem of the word changes. Okay? And so we have to get into this, and I have to show you what that looks like and how do you translate it. So the way this works, we form the future by adding the tense suffix, the sigma, to the stem of the verb. So thus, while lu, lambda upsilon, is the stem of the verb, which is that way in terms of the present and the imperfect. It's loose. It's lambda upsilon adding a sigma is the future stem, or is the second stem. Okay? Now I want to show you something, and I want you to be aware of this. In the back of the book, there is this area called vocabularies. You may not be able to see this. Maybe you want to blow up your screen here on the video, do full screen, so you can see where my cursor is. We have all of the lessons, but then in the very back of the book, there's these vocabulary, and then you have Greek to English vocabulary. It'll look something like this. It could be around page 255 in the textbook, so you just have to scroll all the way up to view this. And you got all these vocabulary words here, and we're going to be starting to use this moving forward in our lessons. Well, I want to take you to luo. I want you to see luo and see what it looks like in this vocabulary entry. Notice it here. This is the word luo, but notice that it's luo, luso, elusa, leluka, lelumai, eluthane. How you say, what are all of these? I thought we're just dealing with luo. Yep, it's all the same word because it means I loose, I destroy, I break. It's all the same word, but the word takes many different forms, or the verb takes different forms. I have not talked yet about this. I'm talking about it now. This is the first time I'm talking about what we call principal parts. This is a term that you need to understand. Principal parts. Okay? So, there are to every verb. Okay? And these principal parts are 6. There's 6 principal parts, or you could call them 6. Instead of saying 6 principal parts, you could say that's just the technical name given in Greek textbooks, especially this one. But what I like to call 6 versions of the stem. So there's 6 of these. Different versions of the stem. So this is the first version of it. This is the second version of it. So whenever you have this, so you have the first stem, okay? You have the second stem. You have the third stem. So these are different versions of how the verb looks, and based on those different versions, each of these tenses that we're going to be studying, the future, the aorist, the perfect, the pluperfect, all of these different tenses that we're going to be studying, they build themselves in terms of the way it's formed, the way the verb is formed. They build themselves on a particular version or a particular stem of that verb. So there's 6 of them. There's always 6 of them. Okay? 5th stem, and then there's the 6th stem. So I'm going to use the verb for luo, the base word that we've been using. So here we got 6 principal parts, or different versions of the stem. And so what I'm going to do is copy all of this, and then I'll put it in here for you. I want you to see me do this. Always make it 17 point. Okay. This was the first stem, and that's all we've been dealing with right now is the first stem. Because the present tense and the imperfect tense was all built upon the first form, or the first version of or the first stem. I'll probably call it first stem. So here you have present and imperfect. Make sure I spell it right. There we go. Present and imperfect. So present and imperfect tenses. Okay. And it was all voices. So it was active, middle, passive. For second stem, we have, let me get these copied. There we go. And I'll delete that. There we go. So these are the different stems. In the vocabulary, they're listed in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? They're listed that way in order. And when you look at this, what you have is that this one is the future, active, and middle tense. Probably the best way to say is future tense, active and middle voices. There we go. Now, as we learn these other ones, aorist, perfect, pluperfect, in future lessons, as we learn this going forward, what we'll do is I will update this chart so that you see how it develops, okay? But the difference between this stem and this version of the stem is what? The adding of a sigma. Okay? That is what you have to learn. There's the addition of a sigma right there. Okay? There's the addition of a sigma. And that's where Machen is going with this. Okay, so let me first cover with you, what does the future tense mean? See, the present tense means ongoing action. Imperfect means ongoing action, but present means it's in the present time. Imperfect means it's in the past time. That's what it's referring to. Okay? So what you have here is that you have the future tense. It just means that it is action that will take place sometime in the future. So it means what you think it means, okay? There's no sense, though, of ongoing action. Ongoing action is not implied here, okay? You can't say that this is going to be future action that will start at some point in the future and will automatically be ongoing. That's not what future means. The action could be ongoing, but it doesn't have to be ongoing, okay? All that the future tense is identifying is that the action will take place sometime in the future. The nature of that action, it's a one-time action or it's an ongoing action, that's left for some other contextual clues. But it's just based on the word itself, the formation of the verb itself, then it's just going to be stating that action will take place sometime in the future, and that's where we're at with all of this at this point, okay? And so, and as you will learn, we're going to be dealing with this new stem. Now, it's built off of the same idea of the word. It's all still the idea of loosing. If you go back to the vocabulary, even though you have 6 versions, 6 different stems, it's still the same meaning. Okay? It's not a different word. It's just a different formation of it. I mean, this happens in all kinds of languages. This actually happens in Tagalog, in the Tagalog language, very much. And so it's just the way things are. And so when you examine these Greek words, um, then you have these different stems. So you just need to you realize this. You're going to have to learn these different stems. So you're going to have to learn luo, luso, elusa, leluka, lelumai, eluthane. You're going to have to learn the patterns of all of this. And as we go from lesson to lesson to lesson, you're now going to be dealing with this vocabulary section, looking up verbs in the vocabulary section, and we'll start doing that when we're actually translating sentences. I'll show you how to go to the vocabulary section in the back of the book and work through this. So it's going to add a dynamic to translating that we haven't had before. So now we're dealing with different stems. So again, the way the textbook deals with this, it calls the first stem the present stem. It calls the second stem the future stem, and so it's just the name that it gives. I like the idea of first and second and third, just so you see it as distinct from. It's not connected to the tenses. Okay, it's just not connected to the tenses as much as you might think it is. But it's a way in which you learn how to be able to identify what kind of verb are you looking at, what kind of tense is it, what kind of voice is it, what kind of mood is it, okay? So if you come back over here, again, it's talking about how the future has this sigma added to it instead of it, being by itself, being absent from it. This is the first stem. This is the identifying marker of the second stem. Okay? And so, and also, it must be remembered, or will be remembered, that in the present and imperfect tenses, the middle and the passive are alike in form. But in the future, the passive is quite different from the middle. And so we'll have a separate lesson in the future here on the future passive indicative. So when you have future middle indicative, that's different than future passive indicative. They look totally different from each other, okay? And you'll learn about the passive later on. You don't have to worry about that right now. So when you have loose, oh my, it does mean I shall loose for myself. It does not mean I shall be loosed. So remember, middle and passive in the future tense is not the same. Okay? You have future active indicative. That's one paradigm, which is this right here. So you have luso, luces, luce, lusamen, luceti, usin. Now notice, it's the same endings as the present active indicative. O, ace, a, amen, eti, usi. The only difference is you have a sigma. You see the sigma? So it's the same as the present active indicative in terms of the formation. The difference is the stem changes. It's the exact same endings. Okay? So you just got to be aware of that. You got to learn these paradigms. You know this drill. I don't have to cover that with you. But I want you to see, if you look at the pattern here, and let me bring up the Machen book again, and let me go to present active indicative. Bring this over here. So there's the future paradigm. Here was lesson 3 when we did present active indicative. Notice, luo, luso, lusace, luace, lusace, luce, it was lue. Here, luamen, loose amen. So again, same pattern as the present active indicative in terms of the endings. So if you know the present active indicative endings, you'll also know the first active indicative endings. But it's, how do you tell if it's future as opposed to present? Well, you have that sigma. The sigma in the stem is what tips you off to that. Okay? That's what tips you off to that. Here is the future middle indicative. So if we go back and we look at, there's the present middle passive here. So if I look at present middle indicative, it was lu amai, loose amai, lu a, loose, and there's my eta with the iota subscript. Lu etai for present active, present middle indicative. What do I have here? Loose etai, and so on. So again, present active indicative endings are the same for future active indicative. The present middle indicative is the same for future middle indicative. The endings are the same. What's different? The addition of this sigma in the stem. It's not lambda upsilon, it's lambda upsilon sigma. Lambda upsilon sigma. So that sigma is not a part of the ending, it's a part of the stem. The ending is omai, etai, amatha, estha, ontai. The endings, that's the endings. The endings are separate from the stem. The stem now has 3 letters. It has an additional sigma here. And so you have to be aware of that. It's that sigma that is the sign of the future tense. In future tense, in terms of the future active and the future middle. So these are the translations. I shall loose for myself, thou wilt loose for thyself, or you will loose for yourself, singular. He will loose for himself, and then we shall loose, or we will. You can also use will, not just shall. I will. I like using will anyway. We will loose for ourselves. You will loose for yourselves. This is plural. They will loose for themselves. And so, again, this is what it's meant. And again, and so when you look at the vocabulary here, when you go back to the vocabulary, you have, again, there's the first stem, there's the second. Some would call it first principal part, second principal part. I like calling it first stem, second stem. So it's the second entry in the vocabulary. Here you have, let me find another verb that we're familiar with. I'm going to go up to here. I know one like balo. I'm going to find balo. So here's balo. There's the first stem. And then this one's different. This is balo. So you say, wait a minute, why is it different? We'll find out. Here you have bino, basomai. So words do change, but when you have these vocabulary words, um, it's the way they're formed, and so you just have to realize that when it comes to the future, it's built off of the second stem, and there's this sigma attached to it. Okay. Now, this is where it gets fun. When the stem of the verb, now we're going to talk about that stem. We're going to talk about the formation of this stem, lambda, upsilon, sigma. Okay. When the stem of a verb ends in a consonant, that's when things can happen. Okay. So the stem here, upsilon, is what? Is that a vowel or a consonant? It's a vowel. So when it's a vowel, look, you just add the sigma. It's when it's a consonant. Okay. So think of it this way: if the consonant, the last consonant, is the pi letter, beta, or phi. So for example, you have this word pimpo. That's first stem. Okay. Um, so I'll show you how this works. Okay. And I'll just kind of show it here. I'm going to have to copy and paste. You know what? I'm going to do the same for these words here. And I'm going to put all this in one format for myself. Okay, I'm going to make that 17 point. Okay, I want you to look at this. So if I take this word here, that's my first stem, right? And I bring it over here, and I take this sigma, and I add a sigma to this, because there's my ending. Omega is my ending. Now I have a word that says pimpso, pimpso. And you say, well, what's the problem with that? I just took my sigma and I added it to the stem. This was the stem, pimp. Pimp was the stem, so I added the sigma to the stem. There's the ending. There's the ending. Well, when you add the sigma to that pi letter, it doesn't like it. The Greeks can't say that in first century. Okay? In their language, they don't pronounce it that way. So what they do is this pi and the sigma, those two letters come together, and we've seen this happen before, right? In other places, like when you have that augment and it gets added. Whenever two certain kinds of letters come together, it can change to a different letter because it sounds better when they pronounced it. So the pi and the sigma change to a phi, or psi, sorry, psi. So the two letters here coalesced together, merged, and changed into this letter. So instead of it being pimpo or pimpso, it's pimptho. It's just a difference. It meets the sound qualifications, but it takes away the hardness of that pi letter, and the softness of the sigma and merges it into one new letter. Okay, so we have the same kind of thing here. Okay, I'm going to copy this, bring it over. So if I have grapho, and I'm going to add my sigma again, and now it's a phi, the phi letter plus the sigma. There's my ending. This is my new stem, graphs, grapho. You say, well, that doesn't sound bad to me. Well, it wouldn't, because you're not used to saying that word. But for the Greeks, they couldn't say it that way. So these two letters merge together and they form that same C letter. So it looks a lot different, doesn't it? But that sigma is still there. It's just been merged in with the final letter of the stem in the original form of it. Okay? So again, the reason this one didn't change is because when you have that upsilon with a sigma, it doesn't change. It's a vowel, and that's okay for that situation. Here, we have the same kind of situation. So what I'm going to do is streamline this process a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. So here's ago, and I'm going to copy this one, copy this one, and then I'm going to take my sigma. So there's my sigma would go there, my sigma would go there, my sigma would go there. So again, omega is the ending, okay? There's the ending. That's not a part of the stem. The stem is ogos, ox. See, it's difficult to pronounce now. And then this is arcs and path. So when the sigma is added to these kinds of letters, if you have gamma and sigma, it changes to Kasi. And let me do this. So this, you can even see it better visually. So I'm going to get rid of these squiggly lines. I want you to be able to see this really well. Okay, so if you have that, this will make it even more apparent what we're talking about. Okay, so now I've tried to graph it out really for you. So here's the first stem. This is the second stem. Here is the transitional part, okay? So first stem, transitional form. Now over here is second stem. Okay. Okay. So added my sigma to the pi letter, changed to psi. I added my sigma to the phi letter, changed to psi. If I add a sigma to gamma, it changes to Kasi. If I add a sigma to Ki, it changes to Kasi. If I add a sigma to a theta, the theta drops out and the sigma remains. So do you see the changes that occur? It's because of these certain consonants. And those are just some samples. So you have pi, beta, and phi. We didn't see examples of every single letter of every possibility. You got kappa, gamma, and chi, and then you got tau, delta, and theta. So these are your 9 consonants. If the stem of the verb ends in one of these 9 consonants, and you add a sigma to the stem, it's going to have those changes in it. Those consonantal or merging of letters together because of the sound of the word. So you need to be aware of that. Okay? You need to be aware of that. This is where it gets interesting because you just can't just slap an S on it, put an S on it all the time. Technically you are. They're always adding the S for that stem. But when that sigma shows up with one of these 9 letters, it's not going to, the sigma may not stay. It may change the letter, or one of the letters will drop out and the sigma will remain. Okay? So it's just the way it is. So you want to read through this, be aware of this, but this is what that looks like. This is what that's talking about. Okay? So, in the case of many verbs, the verb stem is different from the present stem. Now, sometimes the stem just totally changes. Like, for example, the verb stem for keruso is not really kerus, even though that's the way it forms, but it's really kerux. The real form is kerux. You say, well, why in the present, why is the first stem kerus? It's because technically, when the certain endings were placed on that word, it softened out to 2 sigmas. But technically, the stem should have been kerux, and so when you think of it as the first stem being kerux, the future is kerux, because if you add the sigma here, sigma to the kappa, it changes to that letter there. So as you go through, again, practically speaking, I'm going to help you learn how to spot these verbs when you're doing translation and how to begin to use the vocabulary section in the back of the book to help you figure out what this verb is and how do you translate it. So when I go through the translation video, which will be part 2, when I go through the translation video, you're going to see how I do this, okay? And I'll show you the practical way of using the vocabulary in the back of the book and working through translating sentences. So the verb stem of baptizo is not really baptiz, but it's baptid was the original stem. And so when you get to the second version of the stem, it goes back to this and it builds off of that. And so the future is baptis. Baptizo, it's formed by the rule in 156, which goes back to these letter changes. So in general, the future of the Greek verb cannot certainly be formed by any rules. It must be looked up in the lexicon for every individual verb. And that lexicon, what that's talking about for our purposes, is this vocabulary section that's at the end of the book. Okay? Starts on page 253, and it moves forward from there. Again, I will show you how to use this vocabulary section. So when you start translating here in this lesson, you're going to need to have you need to have a tab open and get to that Machen book. Okay, get access to the Machen book. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can get access to the Machen textbook. It's below in the links. Okay, there's a way to get access to it so that you can visibly see it. And now you're really going to be using it, especially the vocabulary section in the back of the book. Okay, and so you're going to have a separate tab open. And again, I'll show you how I do that. Okay, moving forward, I'll show you how I do that. Because there are numerous the irregularities. So I wanted to give you, even though you say, well, you just showed me how to do this, yes, to give you a perspective on it. It doesn't mean you're going to be doing this all the time. You're not going to spend your time trying to form the word and add sigmas and try to figure it all out based on a set of rules. It doesn't work that way. You're going to learn practically how to go to the vocabulary section of the textbook and find that second stem, the second principal part in the list, and realize, okay, that's what I'm looking at. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to do that for the practicality sake of it. The Greek verb is for the most part exceedingly regular in deriving the individual forms, indicating voice, mood, person, number from the basal tense stems. But when you're dealing with changing those tense stems, which now we're doing that as we go forward, looking at aorist and looking at other tenses, that stem is going to be changing. And so when you're looking at the formation of the stem, it's just often exceedingly irregular. So, um, they're going to be, like I said, there's six of these different stem formations, and they're called. He calls them the principal parts. And we've only technically learned two of them. The first of the principal parts, which I call first stem, is for the present and the imperfect in all three voices. For the second principal part, or the second stem, all of the future, active, and middle. So I've already talked about that. That's what this was up here in my discussion of present and imperfect tenses, all voices. So again, I'm going to be continuing to add to this as we go forward. Okay. Now, the regularity of the Greek verb in making the individual forms within each tense stem. Once you know what the tense stem is, it's when, let me just read this. Regularity of the Greek verb in making the individual forms within each tense system from the first form of the tense system, and the great irregularity in making the first forms themselves may be illustrated by the very irregular verb erchomai. The student would certainly never have expected that the future of erchomai would be a word that says elusamai. You would never think that. You would think, okay, it's erchomai. I put a sigma there, and that forms the second stem. No, it looks totally different. So again, you're dealing with so much irregularity that how do you practically deal with the situation? So once you have learned from the lexicon that elu samai is the first person singular of the future, the third person plural then, elu santai, can be derived exactly. So once you know the stem, then you can get the endings better. But it's learning the stems and every verb's irregular. It's because from this point on, it will be assumed that the student will use the general vocabularies at the back of the book. That's what I'm going to teach you how to use in the next video as we translate these sentences. The method of using them may be illustrated as follows. Okay, so he gives you an example. Okay, we want to translate "they will begin" into Greek. So this is going backwards. The first step is to look up the word begin in the English to Greek vocabulary. It is there said that begin is expressed by the middle voice of archo. The next step is to look up the word archo in the Greek English dictionary or Greek English vocabulary. With it, in the Greek English vocabulary, the principal parts are given. The second of the principal parts is the future, arxo. So it is the future which is desired, because they will begin is future. But in the middle voice, arco, which means begin. Therefore, we're looking for the future middle indicative, third person plural, of the idea of begin. Therefore, can be derived from arxo after the analogy of luo. And then if the paradigm of luo be consulted, discover that the future middle indicative, third person plural, is formed from the second of the principal parts. So at the end of it, we're treating arxo in the same way. So we're keeping the arcs. We got that from the principal parts, from finding it in the vocabulary, and adding the ontai to it. So arcs ontai is the form desired. Okay, now let's go forward. Okay, if the form sosai, if you found that in the Greek English exercises, so now we have a sentence that has that word in it. And we're going to go to the Greek English exercises. That's where we find it. It's in one of our sentences. The student will naturally guess that the second sigma here is the sign of the future, just as the sigma is in luce. So he will therefore look up verbs beginning with so. So you're going to think, okay, this may be the, that may be the future sigma right there, and let's look up so. Without difficulty, sozo comes up. It will be found. In its future, which is the second of the principal parts, the second stem, is discovered to be exactly what you thought it would be, of which, of course, suse is epsilon iota is a different ending. That's the third person singular ending of this is always the first person that's in the principal parts. So, for example, we have the word sozo. So we'll go back to our vocabulary. Okay. And let me look here. Okay, it just wants to open up everything, doesn't it? Okay, so I go to so that's sigma. So let me do it this way. Let's see if I can collapse all of these and show you how it would better look. Okay, so I open up my vocabulary, Greek to English vocabulary. I'm looking for the word sozo. Okay, sozo. So I go and I find, I'm going alphabetical order. There's my pi sigma. So I have everything from prosopon. Again, you may want to watch this in full screen, to sos. So I look up sos. It's not there. So I go to this one. There's soteria. Nope, it's probably in this one. So it's alphabetical order, and I find it under sozo. I click there, and notice there's my first stem, there's my second stem. And so the word that I have in my sentence was so say. I go here and I'm saying, okay, that's the same word, second stem. I change the omega to that's the first person singular. I change it to third person singular. And that's how I work through that. If I have oxo, then that the sigma, if I have that and that's a future, and I think it's a future, I'm going to say oxo. So I got a sigma there. So if I take it, so that means that this key letter or this letter here, that maybe is the sigma mixed in with another letter. So the present could be ako, ago, oxo. So I could look up all three of those. Because when you have this letter here, if I come up here, if I have this letter, well, it tells me it comes from ago, but I have three possibilities to form that letter. So I'm working backwards. So I'm going to look up each of these, And so if I try to look up ako or oxo, it doesn't even exist, but ago does. So I would come over here, go back to this is agathos. So if I go to ago, there's ago. That's the first stem. There's my second stem. It matches. It's just that um, I need to know how to find it in the vocabulary. So you got to be aware of this. We're going to start using the vocabulary section in the back of the book. The best way for me to teach you how to do this is to work through the words as we translate sentences. This is when Greek gets a lot more tougher. Okay? So you got to be aware of that. I would read through 162 here, read through 163. Some verbs, we still have that deponent. Remember the deponent? Where it's middle in form, right? But present in meaning. And that's why we always said middle in form. Because we could say middle passive, and that was okay for present and imperfect. But if we say middle passive for future, that's not the same. It's middle in form, active in meaning. So let me cover with you the vocabulary. Again, I have everything in Quizlet. I have it all ready for you. Just use that as examples and go through and test yourself. But notice what it's doing for you. See, anablepo, that's the new vocabulary word. That's the first stem. Future, second stem, anablepso. So it's giving you that. You would find this in the vocabulary as well, the vocabulary section at the end of the book. But you can learn it that way. If you start memorizing these principal parts, that's a good thing. Okay? That's a real good thing. I look up, I receive my sight. This is basomai. I shall go or I will go. That is the deponent future of bino. Bino. So if I go back, I'll show you this. If I go to here's the word bino. That's the first stem. Basomai. There's the second stem, which I build the future off of. See, what I want to do is try to learn both of those. I want to say bino, basomai. Bino, basomai, I go. Okay? That's the way I really want to learn this. You got genesomai, that's I will become. Deponent future of genomai. You have nosomai, that's the I will know, that's the deponent future of genosko. So these are words that we've had already, but in the first stem form. Now we're getting introduced to the second stem form. Didaxo, it's I will teach, that's the future of didasco. Dioko, that's the future of dioxo. So dioko is the first stem. The future stem, or the second stem, is dioxo. I pursue, I persecute. Then we have doxazo. That's the first stem. Future would be doxaso. I glorify. And then elusomai is I will come, I will go. Deponent future of erchomai. So erchomai is the first stem. This is second stem. Exo or hexo, that has a rough breathing. Hexo, I will have. That's the future of echo. So echo, it's a smooth breathing. Echo is first stem. Hexo is second stem. Then we have keruso, and that's word for proclaiming or preaching. So this is first stem. Future stem this is second stem. Keruxo. Lapsomai is I will take. That's the deponent future of lambano. So lambano is first stem. This is second stem. Okay. So the vocabulary is giving you both stems now. It's giving you first stem and second stem. Prasukamai is deponent. So that's a word for I pray. Well, that's first stem. Second stem is proxus, amai. I pray. Or this would be I will pray. Tuflos, tuflos, a blind man. So that's a noun. So most of what you're getting in this is the verbs. Some verbs that we've already had, some verbs we have not had. So if we have not had these verbs yet, if they're new to this lesson, they give you the first stem, then the second stem. If it's a verb that we've already had, they give you the second stem first in the entry here, and then they refer back to what the first stem is. So then this is future, active, and middle indicative. Future tense, active and middle voices. Okay, so that's what we're learning in this lesson. So again, you're learning about new verbs, or well, you're learning about verbs, but you're learning about the different tenses. That's what we're focusing on right now. So again, you'll go through this, work through it. You got to be doing this 30 minutes to an hour a day. You really got to put time into this to learn all of this, okay? I'm going to pray for you, but at the same time, I want to tell you before I pray, we're going to have the next video. I'm going to take some of these sentences just like I normally do, and I'm going to translate them, but I'm going to start using this vocabulary in the back of the book, okay? I'm going to start using that, teaching you guys how to use that, because you're going to need it now. You're going to need to go to the vocabulary in the back of the book. You're going to need to be able to refer to that to work through the translation of these verbs, okay? Well, let me pray for you, and then there'll be part 2. It'll come and be on the channel as well. Again, all the resources, take a look down below in the YouTube video. If you're taking this for a course, you should get access to this in the area where you normally work through this, work through all the lessons. So all the information is there, all the resources are there. But let me go ahead and pray for you, and pray for our learning of the Greek language. Dear Lord, we just thank you again for all that you show us, all that you do for us, in helping us to understand this language, this Greek grammar. Lord, as we take this lesson by lesson and spend some time on each lesson, Lord, we just pray that we would learn how to translate your word in the New Testament, how to really understand it, how to translate it, be able to know it, so that eventually we can exegete it at the Greek level and know exactly what you're talking about. And Lord, we just give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. So again, if you have any questions about anything, let me know. Reach out to me in whatever way you can. Post a comment on the video, or send me an email, Facebook message, whatever way you can get connected with me. And I will do my best to answer any questions that come up. Okay? Well, take care. God's blessings. And we'll see you in the next video.